This is Support is Sexy, episode 385, with Ariel Belgrave, founder and fitness trainer at Gym Hooky. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi everyone, happy Monday and welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And today our episode is fun. We have Ariel Belgrave, and Ariel is the founder, creator, and fitness trainer at Gym Hooky. Gym Hooky is her wellness company that helps women, busy women, live their happiest, healthiest lives with smart advice on taking care of yourself, but also doing so with home workouts, so not having to go to the gym. Gym Hooky, brilliant. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode with Ariel, and in it she not only talks about some tips, of course, on home workouts and how to set up your home gym easier than you think. She also shares super smart advice about career and how to take ownership of your own career. She talks about the importance of the feedback loop. You know, feedback is information. Also, how to be coachable. I'm all about it. And she shares something I had never heard of before called lifestyle creeping. Make sure you listen to that, lifestyle creeping. So great information in here, lots of fun with Ariel. I know you're going to enjoy it. So now, without further ado, Ariel Belgrave. So Ariel, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Absolutely. After we had our little technical difficulties, we made it through together. Nobody even knows I spilled the beans.
It's all right. No one got hurt.
I know. I just always feel bonded to people when I go through that with them. So I'm glad we went through that together.
Yes, I love it.
So first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
So I would say my siblings and I, and actually this is the first time that I've officially shared this, but my siblings and I had, I would say, a recycling business, and we didn't even know it growing up. So when we were younger, I would say in like kindergarten to elementary, our mom had us saving the cans. So 5-cent cans, it was her way of like teaching us how to count, manage money. And I have 3 other siblings, so a sister and 2 brothers. So what we'll do over a 3-4 month time period, we would collect cans. And before going to the bottle place to redeem it for cash, we would count it. And we took so much pride in like getting the number right.
It's like, we got to recount it.
We got to recount it. Or if they say another number, it's like, I don't think that's right. We counted it like 10 times. So just teaching us how to count and manage cash. But what got interesting, where it turned more into a business, was our family was aware of what we were doing. So we would go to my grandmother's house and she would have this big bag of cans waiting for us. And ultimately, that's where the hustle started. So we go to my aunt's house. They were collecting cans for us. And what was cool was, yes, we were learning to manage and manage that money and count it at a young age, but also we would split it. And it was our way of like saving our allowance to buy something we really wanted and so forth. So I would say that was like the super early stages of the hustle.
I love that. And I love the value that teaches a young person from a simple thing, like you said, collecting cans, and then the fact that the family gets involved in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So where did you grow up?
So I have a pretty unique background. I'll start off with saying I'm adopted. Mm-hmm. So I was born in New York, lived in Trinidad for a little bit. That's where my birth mother is from. I'm half Trinidadian, half Panamanian. Mm-hmm. When I was adopted, came back to the States, I grew up in Boston. So Boston is where I spent most of my time growing up, went to college there. So I went to Boston College. And yeah, so I'm an East Coast girl living on the West Coast now.
You're on the West Coast now. That's right. You're in San Francisco? Where are you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. How do you like San Francisco as opposed to Boston? Very different.
Very different. So before living here, I actually was living in New York. So number one would be change of pace. The story I like to share with folks is when I used Google Maps for the first time in San Francisco, and it said that it would take 20 minutes to walk there, and I felt like I got there in 10. So New York, super fast, get from point A to point B. And San Francisco, I just feel like Google Maps is set up to be a little bit slower because people are
moving a little bit slower. Lot more chill, right?
A lot more chill. But I do appreciate the weather. It's going to be, I'm going to Boston for the holidays tomorrow. So going back to the snow, it's been a while. So I'm a punk now.
Oh, you're a punk now. Is all your family still in Boston?
My family's still in Boston. So it's snowing there now.
Oh, wow. It's not, that's right. I'm from New York, but in Atlanta, and it's like, I don't know, 60 something here. So I forget too that, yeah, it's winter. It's about to be Christmas.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, about these sweaters that I need to pack because I can't wear what I wear there.
What brought you to San Francisco?
What brought me here was my transition from the finance world to tech, essentially. So the first parts of my career, I started working at JPMorgan. And worked there for 4.5 years. My fourth year in, went through this whole period of, I don't feel like I'm getting satisfied in my work. I'm going to sound like a super millennial when I say this, but
it's okay.
But I just wasn't passionate. I didn't feel like I was waking up and feeling like I was making an impact to someone or something.
Had you studied finance in school at Boston College? Is that like were you on your career path, basically?
No. I started at Boston College biology pre-med. So I was set on becoming a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor when I grew up. And that's what I knew. I was a first generation college student. So being Caribbean, I would say what's deemed a success is doctor, lawyer, engineer.
Engineer, right.
So for me, I always had this fascination with learning about the body and how it works and people. And my uncle's wife was an OBGYN doctor. So I learned a lot about her. I saw what they had and I'm like, ooh, success. Like, I want to be a doctor. I really love the sciences. But when I got to college, it was a harsh reality for the first time I learned the difference between like passion and perhaps a career. It was for the first time I learned that like, hey, you can do what you really love. And although I really enjoyed like learning about the body and fitness, I wouldn't say at that time, but like essentially that's what it was. I didn't want to do it as a career. So I ended up, what core classes do when you go to college, right, is expose you to different things outside of what you may have been exposed to before. So took some core classes, one of which was psychology. And I was super, super interested in just learning about like the mind and how people work and intrinsic versus extrinsic like factors and how it drives us as people. So from that, I ended up switching my major and was biology pre-med, switched over to psychology pre-med. So still did the pre-med. I'm like, hey, might as well.
Right.
First 2 years. So continue that. But midway through, I realized I had a knack for the business side, and that's where it all came through. So I started working at a tax accounting firm, actually, that was up the street from Boston College, mainly to pay for my textbooks because I was paying for school myself. And within the first few months, the owner of the tax accounting firm was like, hey, like, you are so good with numbers. I'd love for you to move from being like an office manager and be a tax practitioner intern. I'm like, what on earth is that?
Right.
What on earth is that? And while I was in school, she paid for me to go to tax school at BC. And that's where my like intro to finance, numbers, business came about.
So then you're on that path, you sort of continue that after school, and then you find yourself at JPMorgan. And then about how far into it did you start feeling like, this isn't exactly it?
So I would say it actually started within my first year. So I actually did a 2-year rotational program. And the benefit of doing that, a lot of large organizations do it now, is to kind of learn what you want to do. So you think you may know, but kind of exposing you to different parts of the business, you can get a better sense. So I ended up working in the Boston for the duration of the rotational program. And it was a lot of like operations, tax, data. I did some project management. But where I spent a lot of my time as well, and there was more of a joy, was more on the people side. So I was that girl for Black History Month or Hispanic Heritage Month or Volunteer Day, just trying to get people together. And that's where I first saw my knack for like, hey, community, I really love to bring people together, people to learn, and so forth. So after my rotation ended in 2 years, there was an opportunity for me to, I had career discussions with my manager. All my managers were super supportive. So super supportive of me like doing what I really enjoyed, and they kind of saw where my interests were. So I had an opportunity at JPMorgan to join a team called the People Agenda. So wasn't in HR, but it was kind of on its own island where there was a focus on employee engagement, diversity, networking and philanthropy, learning and development. So I ended up joining a team of what became two. It was like a new team they put together and doing that. And that's where I got my knack for the people side. And I did that for the remaining 2.5 years, where I grew in my role very quickly and ended up the global head for finance of People Agenda. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think I love that, not a lot of us get this chance, but in the position during your rotation or just after, as you said, you had managers who tried to at least tap into what they saw you were good at, as opposed to forcing you into, not forcing you, but you know what I mean, leading you down some path that, well, this is what people do after they finish the rotation, or this is how it works. So for all the managers listening and for people who might be in that position and moving along, is there a way to either showcase what you're great at in the work you're doing, or to even ask for and say, this is what I'm really interested in. Is there anything like this? Because it sounds like they sort of created this department or this opportunity for you and your one other colleague.
Yeah. And you know what I will say? I do want to start with saying that I was super blessed with the managers that I did have at JPMorgan. I didn't know what a good manager was really until I heard other stories from my colleagues on like the support they didn't have.
Right.
So I'm happy to share some of the things that my managers did do. One of which I felt very comfortable having the career conversation. I didn't feel, I think oftentimes people would be reluctant to want to have that conversation and fear that it would hurt them rather than help propel them in their career. So my managers were really good at like asking me the type of things that I wanted to do. And if I couldn't find it in that, if it wasn't a part of that role, they were super supportive of me doing things outside of it. So even though I was doing the people agenda, I still was super heavily involved in the groups that were putting together things for the Black employees at JPMorgan. I was heavily involved with doing helping out, volunteering for 5Ks that JPMorgan, who's a large organization, runs, and so forth. So having that candid conversation helps, but also just having a genuine interest in the career growth of the employees. So my managers met with me every single week. But I would also say that managers can help, but you also own your career. So going into those conversations, preparing an agenda of some sort, so you can maximize the time that you spent with your manager.
That's great advice. I was going to ask you, actually, how do you suggest people prepare for those conversations, whether hopefully they're blessed with a great manager or managers like you, but even if you're not, just to be able to at least articulate what you're interested in. So for you, it was setting your own agenda and saying, okay, these are the things I want to make sure that I mention, or how did you approach it at that time?
Yeah, so I would say I use those meetings in more ways than one. So it was to kind of we'll continue to have the conversation on where I was, how my work was doing, any challenges I was facing. Managers did an amazing job at ultimately being like the ones to kick any roadblocks out of my way so I could be successful. But what was equally as important was getting feedback. So especially in an environment that's so large in finance, JPMorgan, you don't want to wait until it's time for performance management to get any surprises of things you may not doing well. So getting that feedback along the way, like, hey, like I just did a presentation that I led, like, what did you think about that? So I would really look at that last week for things that happened, whether I led a meeting, whether there was a call we had, whether an initiative was rolled out, and use that opportunity to kind of speak about the initiative, but also things I did well, where there's opportunity, what I really enjoyed in that process. And I think managers did a really good job at taking note of that, because that was where they wanted to put me in going forward, because I was really good at it.
Mm-hmm. And then the fact too that you had it might sound strange to say, but sometimes we don't have the courage to ask for feedback because we're so afraid of what someone is going to say. But as I have learned, I should say, feedback is information. You use it however you like to use it. You take it however you'd like to take it, but we can't be afraid of it, because you never know. Even if someone is critical of you, it could still help you figure out a way to make something better in what you're doing and move forward. Do you think?
I entirely agree. And the thing about it is, feedback could come in different forms, and you don't. You're not also not to assume that their feedback is legitimate, right?
That's where you take it. It's information. Do with it what you will.
You do with it what you will. And I would say, I think one thing for myself. So I definitely became known for that person who accepts. Who likes the feedback. I'm very welcoming. So if anything, you want to be that person, whether you agree or not, you want to be known as that person who receives it, because you could be at a total loss if you become this super defensive person. And it could be someone sharing information that, they could be sitting at the table and hearing this one bit of information, if Ariel would just get involved in or kind of tapping into this group of people who can really influence moving her and her career. If a person doesn't feel comfortable telling you that, then that's a lost opportunity for you. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That I never thought of that, because they might be thinking about, even if they're rooting for you and want you to do something, if they know something about, or they believe, or in their experience, we'll say, of your personality is that you're not someone who takes feedback well, they might not tell you, or I would think they might not want to suggest you to another team or something because they worry about how you'll respond to feedback.
Right. Mm-hmm. And to kind of flip the script on that, being someone who receives feedback makes it easier to be able to give feedback, because people know that it's a two-way street. Mm-hmm. So if you're that person who's just you're not good at this, or you can improve this, but then you tell them feedback and they're like, meh.
Right. Don't want to hear it.
Don't want to hear it. It's but what? Exactly. So knowing that is a two-way street. But I can't emphasize enough how I feel that getting that feedback as someone who's in the I wouldn't say 9 to 5 world, because it's not really 9 to 5, but the full-time role versus even someone having your own business, being, and I'm going to use this word because I heard it recently on your podcast, so being coachable.
Yes. Oh, yes, Ariel, for listening. I love it. Thank you. That's true, though. Maybe that's why I'm talking about it so much. I'm so into what you just said about it.
So but it's true. Being coachable, really, and it could be from anyone, and it doesn't even have to be someone who's more advanced, like your manager, your management manager. It can be your colleague. It could be you can learn from someone who may be one level lower than you in a company. You could always learn, and just being open to that can really help you as a person.
Excellent. Now, how would you say that all of being open to feedback and being coachable and all of those things helped you to be able to have the conversations with your managers, which I'm assuming you did when you decided that you wanted to go in a different direction with your career? What was that moment like when as you mentioned to us earlier, that you decided, I don't know if this is it?
Yeah. Now, it is so funny that I'm literally doing, I work full time at Facebook, but I am working on a career stories asking these very questions to the organization who've had interesting career trajectories in the company. So perfect timing.
Perfect timing for you to answer those questions, right?
Yes, exactly. So I would say where I officially made the transition. So my first big transition was moving from the operations side to the people side. And my manager, it really helped that she understood what my strengths and interests were. At the time, I was on the data team. And although I was really good at kind of synthesizing data, I really didn't enjoy it. Didn't really see myself as a super analytics person. So I communicated that to her. And what was key was knowing that I wasn't going to leave her high and dry. Right. So I want to make this change. I communicated what I want to do next, what are the things I want to do next, saw an opportunity, was moving to another state, and also understood that like things would happen rather quickly. So what that meant was myself communicating with my manager what the plan would look like and like how I wanted to support this transition to the best way I can. So it ended up a case where I ended up moving to New York, but splitting half of my time in my old job, half of my time in my new job to help with that transition. And those are the type of things that you want your manager to remember you for, is like holding it down, making it easy for them, but also knowing that you have an opportunity coming up that they're supporting.
Right. And that you also, I think that's smart too. I have always tried to do that when possible, is maintain that relationship, because you might, if you're not leaving because the manager is a horrible person or anything like that, you always want to try to maintain that relationship, because you never know. I will say during my 20 or so years in media, most of my positions came from someone that I knew previously in a previous job, whether they ended up as friends or as my friend, or just someone who respected what I did in my work and how I left the company. And you just never know when people are going to come back around in your life or in your trajectory. And it's just good karma, right?
Yes. And team, no burning bridges. Let me tell you, like,
yes, right.
Full circle. It may not be super clear as to how you will need that person in the long run, but you just never know. And I agree 1,000%. Actually, every last one of my managers that I had while I was at JPMorgan, I'm still friend with. One was at my wedding. Still talk to. So, and there's a genuine. It's like they check in on me no matter where I was. They were always checking in on me. So knowing that, like, kind of ending that in good graces, and like, although they're not in a space that I'm in now, like tech, I can still have conversations with them on general, like career stuff, leadership, life. So
yeah, they can become mentors. And I think something you mentioned earlier that's important too, I've heard more people talk about this, they might even be sponsors, meaning in there, as you mentioned, they're in a room at a table that you're not seated at just yet, and they might be able to say something that'll help you move forward in ways you didn't even know. So that's another thing. We have mentors, people we talk to who help us in all different parts of our lives, but then more and more women, especially now, are talking about the importance of sponsors. Having someone who's at the table who can say, well, I think Ariel would be great for this, or this woman I know who's doing this might be great for that. Just having those good, as you said, not burning bridges. You just never know how those connections, especially when they're authentic connections, will help you in the future.
Yes. And you know what? Those sponsors, I can 1,000% say that it was a healthy mix of my mentors, advisors, as well as sponsors that helped me propel my career at JPMorgan. So I was so blessed to 4.5 years in my career, I was in a role as a global head. And granted, it was a lot. It was a crazy responsibility. But the reason why I was offered the opportunity was because there were people at the table who believed in me and saw what I did and saw that I had potential. So with that, I was able to really grow my career.
Now, so you went from JPMorgan to Facebook? That's when you made the move?
No.
You had a startup in between, weren't you?
Yeah. So I took the leap. And this was, everything happened very quickly. But I, never saw myself joining a startup. B, never saw myself joining a nonprofit. I was super business. But as I was going through the search, I was interviewing for tech companies. I was also, like, at the same time trying to build my brand in tech. I was living in New York. A lot of tech is here in San Francisco, but there are some companies, like Facebook is in New York. So really dipping my foot into the puddle of water to kind of learn about that world, and going to tech meetups and so forth. And through 6 degrees of separation, I ended up getting an opportunity to join a nonprofit startup called Deaf Color. So Deaf Color is focusing on helping Black software engineers advance in the tech industry. And I was the first employee.
Employee number one.
Employee number one and program director. So this was something that, like, I didn't have anywhere on my radar. I was looking at, like, larger tech companies and so far, and this opportunity came, and I knew it was me. It had my name written all over it. I was very passionate about building programming. That's something I did while I was at JPMorgan, career development programs, but just even more excited to do something for my community. And that was my opportunity to do that. So ended up moving, my husband now, fiance at the time, moving over to San Francisco. He had a job opportunity here too. So really God was with us on how all this works. He was actually working for a San Francisco-based company first, but working from the New York office. So I was ultimately the call on making that transition over, and it happened very quickly. And I ended up working there as a program director for a year. And within the last 6 months, have been working at Facebook.
Now, did you have any fears about making that move? Because as you said, you were more corporate, as they say, and then this is a startup. You're an early employee number one, or were you driven really by the opportunity? And as you said, it felt like it really aligned with what you wanted to do at the time.
Yeah, it was a healthy mix. So it was a shocker to most that I left the corporate world. I was that girl
you got that good job. What are you doing?
Yeah. Not you, the golden handcuffs.
Right.
That's what they call it.
Exactly. That's right.
but I was also in a good place. So oftentimes people can leave, especially like millennials. Like I'm not I don't feel like I'm having great impact. Like I was in a really good place. I was making great money. But at that point in time, I realized that money wasn't it for me. Like I wanted to do something gratifying. So like there are obviously decisions you do have to make when you're making that going into a startup, A, nonprofit startup, B, is like taking pay cuts and so forth. So at that point, I had to look at my life and look at where my costs were. Like I knew that I was going to make this leap. So even the thought of making that transition into tech, you just don't know what it will be. Right now, you could work for a startup and you don't know if they'll be able to pay you up front or if it's more equity and what that will look like. So just kind of changing your lifestyle. So it's like a bare minimum. I like to call it, is a term that I've shared with many people, is called lifestyle creep. So I'm not sure have you heard of lifestyle creep?
No, but I like it. I'm writing it down.
Yes. So lifestyle creep, as defined, is when you tend to buy more things as you make more money or go on or kind of continue with life, right? So right out of college, I would say I was probably more frugal. I was making less money. But over time, where you get your bonuses, you start to make more money, you tend to buy more and not even realize it. Maybe I may spend $50 more on a sweater that I wouldn't have if I was right out of college or in college. So lifestyle creep tends to be you paying for more things that are more of a want versus a need.
That's so true. And for everyone listening, if you were in college or close to college or whatever, or early in your career, I will tell you, so you're a lifestyle creep when you do that.
Yeah, it's called lifestyle creep. It's called lifestyle creep.
It's called lifestyle creep. Okay, however it is, that was me. Every time, as you spoke about it, I was like, that was me. And I wish I hadn't done that. If only I had known better. Because as you said, with every bonus or with every bump in salary, it's great. But for me, I was in New York at the time, get a new apartment that costs a bit more, move into another neighborhood, buy more clothes and that. I was in the shoes. Shoes was my weakness. So yeah, those Chanel shoes are cute. I can get those now. It was just things and things and things. But really, those things weren't as much of an issue as moving up as far as apartments, especially in New York, new places, more money, spending more money in that neighborhood and that kind of thing. And if I had done differently, as some of my best friend April, who's from Jamaica, also Caribbean, but I would say one of the great things or that I admire about her is as she went up, and I'm telling all her business, but whatever, as she went up in career and she's, founder of a school now, she stayed in the same apartment once she found some place that she liked, didn't hop around, didn't spend all this extra money moving and doing the lifestyle creep. So for everyone listening, I totally get it. It's so easy to do too, because you're making more money, you're excited, but think of other ways. I would advise, based on experience, I speak from what I know, based on experience, figure out a way that you can funnel that money elsewhere as opposed to into just increasing your lifestyle, which I feel like maybe more, I don't know, you're a millennial, you tell me, I feel like more of you know, I'm not too far from you, Generation X, but how more of you know better. Or do you still find that people still do that a lot?
They still do it a lot. I feel so. What can have an impact is where you live. Right. So the best example I can give is living in New York.
Yes.
The culture there, brunches. Let me tell you.
Oh my gosh.
I realize how much money I was spending on brunches until I came to California, where brunches is not really so much of the thing. Like, it's here, but it's not like the thing. Everyone doesn't have brunches for their birthdays and like every type of celebration. So that was hands down, like, I realized how much money I like saved moving here, because in New York, being social is also very valuable. So like, you want to go out, and like sometimes people have birthday weekends, not birthday days. So,
right, exactly. It's an event as opposed to just a dinner.
Exactly. So even with that time where I knew I was making that transition, it was more so being very strategic and intentional about those interactions. What I did know is, yes, I wanted to spend time with my friends. Life is too short. I want to be a part of these milestones in their lives. But what I also knew is that things could be very costly, and I needed to save because I didn't know what my next situation would look like. So with that said, using the brunch as the example, maybe a case where someone's having a brunch and something afterwards. There's one of two options. It's eating before the brunch and keeping things super light, like maybe I'll get a drink and not paying $80 for a simple meal. Or B, saying, hey, like I'm excited to meet up with you guys at the next spot where it may not be as costly, but you're still doing as you wish, which is spending time with them and celebrating the milestone. So kind of making those trade-offs was what was important to me at that time.
Yes, very smart. And I think that the brunch is a great example, or the two events is a great example, because sometimes I think some of us may, especially as we mentioned the golden handcuffs, you think it's going to be such a drastic change, and maybe it will be, but sometimes it's just looking at things where you can simply cut that doesn't feel like too deep of a cut. It still allows you to have a life, but you can make some kind of changes that will still work. There's a way to figure it out, right? As Marie Forleo says, everything is figure-outable.
Yes.
So there's a way to figure it out.
There is a way to figure it out. And know that interaction, like the luxury of today is just, there's different ways that you can interact with people, right? It doesn't have to be costly. You can go get coffee with someone. How much does a coffee cost? You know, you can do an activity together where, you know, and honestly, I think that's the big thing that has changed for me. Being a millennial, it's like, hey, like, being in New York was super excited to do the drinks and brunches and all that. But like now more than ever, it's like, hey, do you want to check out this new tea spot, or like go and do a picnic and catch up that way, where you don't have to spend so much in order to get people's time and be able to catch up. So
that's great. I was going to mention that I hear a lot of people saying more often now, maybe because I listen to a lot of podcasts too, that they don't do sit down, not even for reasons of money, but just even for activities, sit down, lunches, coffees and all that. They do, let's go for a walk, like a walking meeting, you know, so that fitness, which goes back into what you're into, fitness and all of that plays into. Or here, I've started to mention, I live in Stone Mountain, Georgia is where my family is, why I'm down here, and it's near Stone Mountain Park. And a lot of people go for hikes up Stone Mountain Park. So that's been a new thing of, oh, great, we should meet and go for a hike and talk then, as opposed to going and have whatever bacon and eggs and grits and everything everybody else has here. You know, so there's ways of doing it. As you said, it doesn't have to look the same way every time.
Yes, and with my Gym Hooky hat on, killing two birds with one stone.
Yes, I tried to bring it back, Ariel. Bring it back to Gym Hooky. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. You're at Facebook now. You've been there 6 months. At what point did you decide to start Gym Hooky?
Yeah, so I actually started Gym Hooky while I was working at JPMorgan. Gym Hooky turns 3 on January 1st, 2018. So it actually started reasons being on how busy my schedule was when I was working at JPMorgan. So I'll bring it back just a little bit to give you some context. But I grew up playing sports, was super active, played rugby throughout college. So my interest into the real world with the job that was like a crazy hours it hit me pretty hard. I didn't have someone telling me to run up and down a field, was holding me accountable that I needed to be at practice. Tried to do the gym membership, but the gym was out of my way. So I was that person with the membership that didn't really go. I know that there's people out there who can relate to this. So yeah, life changed for me. And what I knew was how I felt when I was at my best and I was not feeling my best. I was eating all types of stuff, late nights. I was also not working out. So just feeling low energy and so forth. So I'm like, hey, need to find a way to hold myself accountable if I can't make it to the gym. Like, I just need to be real with myself. So I decided to build a home, do workouts at home and build a home gym, which consisted of the basics, a mat and a dumbbells to start. That's all I had for the first year. And yeah, I started creating my own workouts. Now, I was also very comfortable with working out. I did grow up playing sports, so I knew what type of exercise to do to target different parts of the body to get the results that I wanted. And within time, I did work with a lot of women at the time, working in more of the HR space at JPMorgan, and they would ask me like, "Hey, how do you look like that?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Like, can you tell me your gym workouts? Like, can you be my buddy at the gym?" And I was like, actually, I don't go to the gym. And to date, I haven't been to the gym in over 4 years. May go to visit if I go to a hotel, may hit the weights every now and then. But for the most part, it's like classes at home. And it got to the point where I was sharing workouts with them all separately. And I'm like, hey, the whole point while working out at home is because I don't have time. So I need to have a central place where I can share this information because it was very valuable. I was working with women who are mothers and really need and had very busy careers, and they really wanted that information, ultimately for me to tell them what to do without them having to think about it. So enters Tumblr, and I ended up creating, I just had a just do it moment. Knew a lot of people was reaching out to me like, hey, like, I know I want to be a resource to something I'm valuable, and I'm super obsessed with just learning about fitness. And why not, as I'm taking care of myself, share this with the masses for people who want to read and care. And I started a Tumblr, and it ended up being Tumblr, then building my following, creating Instagram, where I have most of my larger following, Facebook, and so forth. And from there, it's been me building this wellness brand called Gym Hooky. For people who skip the gym, large audience being a lot of women, but those who are super busy, teaching them how they can live their healthiest, happiest lives without stepping a foot in the gym. So that includes workouts, that includes healthy eating, nutrition tips, recipes, motivation and lifestyle. You got this, girl, you're going to slay this day.
Right.
Type of thing.
I love it. First of all, I love what, that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I love the brand and everything that you're about with the idea too of it's so, again, to talk about April. I guess I have to call her today, my friend April. I'm talking about her a lot, but she and I just had this conversation about the gym, and she was talking about how now she walks to, I think it's a kickboxing class or something like that. But she was saying if she has to, she's in New York too, but if she has to drive and find a place to park and go through, we talked about all the changes you sometimes have to go through. And it's, first world problems, but still, if there's any kind of barrier to get, with ease of going to the gym, most of us aren't going to do it. Or if it's out of the way, or as you said, you're working, you've been there for hours, it's late at night. If it's not in the building, you probably won't go, So I think it's a very real approach to what a lot of us women and men too, I would assume, but a lot of women, we're doing so much. Yes. We just sometimes feel like we don't have time or don't feel like going to the gym. So the fact that it's called Gym Hooky, I just love that. And I want to mention too that I wrote down a couple of things you said. First of all, I'm glad you mentioned with your home gym. The first thing people might have thought of is, oh, well, how can I have a home gym? I don't have space for a treadmill and this and that. We think what the gym looks like. But the fact that you said you started with the mat and some weights. Yes. Right? It can be very simple. So before I ask you a question about that, also, I love that you said you just started, starting with the Tumblr and then building from there. I want to make sure everyone gets that, because I think that's a thing that stands in the way business-wise overall for a lot of us is, I don't know where to start, or I don't want to start until fill in the blank of what we think we have to have, right? But the fact that you saw these people coming to you and asking you questions about what you're doing, and then you just started, and then it evolves, and now you have, 40,000 plus people on your Instagram. So you start and get started. So now going back with the idea that you mentioned about creating your own at-home gym, what would you say are 3 tips for our listeners for their own at-home gym or just an at-home workout? What are some of the things that we can do if we want to skip the gym? Yeah. So I'd like to say finding a space that will work and be consistent with it. So whether you have, I know some people may do the living room, you may have a bedroom where you can do your workouts, an attic.
outdoors if you live in an area that's really nice. But having the space that when you're ready to have that workout is there for you to use. B would be having equipment. I'm half and half on it. I would say bare minimum a mat. It's something about having something there so that space is yours for fitness. Now, a mat, bare minimum, if you're someone who doesn't have dumbbells, body weight exercises can do you great justice. I promise you. That is, I preach that often. The other is dumbbells. I do encourage, it's totally optional, but encouraging at least to invest in some type of strength training, so you can get that resistance and tone to get your Michelle Obama arms.
That's right. That's me every morning. I have dumbbells just sitting in the room and just do a few curls. Gotta do a few curls just to get the blood pumping, get the Obama arms.
Yes. And one thing I will say with your equipment was really important. Oftentimes we want to store things away. I would vote the opposite when it comes to your workout equipment. So if you heard the saying, out of sight, out of mind, that can also apply to workouts. So even if you have it in a corner where you can see it, and it's not you needing to like go pull it out of a closet or anything, that can get you one step closer to being successful in that. Because the reality is, when people think of their home, they think of comfort, right? Being around family, watching TV. So even committing to doing home workouts and being disciplined to do it, it can be very hard in itself. You have to make sure that you're not distracted, and that may be hard in your home if you have kids and so forth. So really thinking about the third being planning. So I know so equipment, and then I would segue into saying planning. If you're a mom with kids, when would be the best time for you to get your home workout in? Is it first thing in the morning before they get up, or is it after you put them to bed? So kind of thinking about that in advance, that can really set you up for success with planning that home workout and so forth.
And I think, thank you for those, but the one about not putting it away, because I swear to you, I was sitting here thinking, oh yeah, and if you have a mat and weights, it'll be easy for you to put away. But I think your point about psychologically having it out of sight, out of mind, we don't think about it. And then too, it creates, even as we mentioned before, just that small little barrier of having to get it out of the closet or get it from wherever may stop you from doing it.
Yes, exactly.
Very good. That's so true.
Yes.
Got to pull my mat out. That's so true. But I do have the weights out there, right? And, well, it doesn't matter where they are, but I see them every day, pick them up and just do it. You don't even think about it.
Exactly. And you know what? So one thing that has worked, because the reality is it would be nice to set aside time for your workout, but it may be a case where you need to fit it in between. So I'm also a huge, huge, huge advocate of trying to fit in a workout as you're going through your daily routine. For example, say you're in the kitchen cooking and you have something in the microwave. Is there anything you can do at that point in time while you watch the numbers go down on the clock of the microwave?
Like what? What could we do? Like calf? Is it called calf lifts or something? I'm just thinking when you stand on your toes.
Correct. So you can do calf raises. Yes, where you're going on your tippy toes and working those calf muscles. Assuming that you're near a counter, you can kind of go at an angle and do some push-ups on the counter. It's some great strength training. Only things required is the counter and your will and way and the way for you to get that out in. You
can do some squats.
You can do squats. So you can even, I know form is a big thing. So like holding on to the counter and like lowering yourself. Finding a wall and doing a wall sit for the duration of the microwave warming up your food.
Those are really more difficult than, well, I'll speak for myself. Other people might be able to do them with no problem. But I find wall sit, I've done them in classes before. It really, you think it's simple until you're holding it for a little bit.
Ooh, wall sits are not easy.
Is it your core that's really working, or is it your legs, or both?
It's a combination of both. I usually encourage people to tighten your stomach when you are, but you would absolutely feel it in your legs. Like you should be sitting down in a chair essentially. And with that said, your body's like really using those muscles to hold your body up.
One of the things I know that you speak about in the information I've read about you too is the importance of focusing on core in your home workouts. So are there things, I know you share many, and for everyone listening, of course, I'll have links to Ariel's website, which is gymhooky.com, and the Instagram is Gym Hooky also, right?
Yes.
Yes. So you want to make sure you go there and see how fantastic and in shape Ariel looks with doing these home workouts. That's the good thing too, especially because you're someone that comes from doing sports all the time. I think people think, oh, well, it's not going to be the same as, if you're doing a home workout. But the fact that you're remaining fit in doing all of this is just a great example of that. But going back to, I know you share workouts and you talk about core. So why is it important for us to focus on our core when we're doing these workouts?
Yeah, core is life.
Core is life.
Core is life. So outside of having those beach body abs that we think about, right? You look good on the outside. There's more to it. So core can help with your balance and really making sure those, like when you're walking, those muscles are good. Even as we get older, our bodies change. So things like balance may sound like, oh, cool. But as you get older, that's needed. You use it in your day to day. Core can help build strength to lift things on your day to day. If you're moving and you're taking things out the U-Haul truck, you are engaging your core. So really making sure that core is life, and it really helps you with your daily routine more than you know.
On your website, again, gymhooky.com, you describe yourself as a combo of Jillian Michaels, giving you tough love, and Oprah Winfrey, lovingly embracing your every move. I love that. But how important would you say that balance is good for you as you work with your clients? Good for you and good for them?
Yeah, so great question. So I would start off by saying that as a trainer in general, it's important to find out what your client's preferred style. So you may have some that range from the boot camp screaming like go, go, go to those who want more of like the cheerleader. So oftentimes clients will pick a trainer who they know fits their style. And I think what you've just described in me being the combo of Jillian and Oprah is why some people may be geared towards the way I encourage and teach them to reach their goals. So how that's helped me, I don't know. So the hybrid of Jillian and Oprah has worked well with my clients because the Jillian side, I'm pushing them to their limits. I'm absolutely holding them accountable for what they need to achieve to reach the goals that they'd like. But at the same time, I'm that person I'm so proud of you. Like,
that's the psychology part of you.
Absolutely. Great call out. But yes, it's understanding people. And to me, it's a healthy balance. If you're too nice the entire time and, it may not have the same result. So knowing that I know that you may not want to give me eye contact right now because I just made you almost die in this workout. But at the same time, know that I'm here for you. You are killing the game right now. So that's helped me connect with my clients on their journey and knowing what works for them and motivates them.
So as a trainer, I know you mentioned in the beginning you first even thought of this idea because people were asking you about your workouts and what you do and that kind of thing. But for people listening who might be in the fitness space or just getting into it and trying to build their own brand, what would you say has been most helpful for you with getting new clients?
Yeah, I would say it really did start with building my brand. What I learned from Gym Hooky, and this is something that's very important, I think worth sharing to anyone looking to build a fitness brand in general. So you look on the Instagram, you look on the Facebooks, any of the social sites, and you will realize that it's saturated with fitness. So the question I always ask anyone who's looking to build a brand is, hey, what is your secret sauce? What will make you different than all these other fitness folks who are out here sharing similar content? So for me, my secret sauce before, I didn't realize it would have become a thing. Now, a lot of people do home workouts 3 years later, but I had a personal problem. I could not make it to the gym. And slowly but surely, I realized that other people had the problem as well. But even before I started Gym Hooky, I did take the time to learn more about the people who were asking me for things and asking me for advice and wanting to know more what they can do to lose weight, to feel better, more energized. So what helped with that was asking people. And what I learned was people follow a lot of folks on Instagram who are in fitness. Now, they're more so deemed as a hashtag WCW, like, oh, I want to look like that. Mm-hmm. The problem is they're not telling me how. It's like the posing is happening, cool, future body, I would love that. But then, like, how do I look like that?
Right.
So at this point in time, I'm like, that is my secret sauce. Like, I want to teach people how to look, I would say, like me and more, how they want to look in general, how they can get that. So learning whether it's like different parts of the body and like how different exercise could target different areas, and just the benefits of being active and working out, and healthy eating tips, and like how it can affect your day to day. My secret sauce was learning. So that's how I built my clients essentially, right? People are coming to me. These are the people who want to learn. These are people who want to be motivated, because I also share lifestyle tips and motivation and so forth. And I would say that was the biggest factor of growing my clients, continuously learning or continuously understanding what their need was, because that does change over time. People who were with me from the very beginning, year one, 3 years ago, have different requests now, right? Mm-hmm. They may have achieved what they wanted to, and now they're on to the next, like, hey, like, now I want to cut down sugar, or, hey, I really want to define my legs more. And knowing that, like, hey, these are things people are looking for. How can I add this to my content and give them what they need, which will keep coming back to me as a resource.
What has been most effective for you? You mentioned with building the brand overall, but especially on Instagram, you have the page is fantastic, as I mentioned, Gym Hooky, which we'll link to. But also, do you think making sure that you are consistent on whether it's all platforms or a certain platform has been really good for you, consistent with either your content or the type of content? What would you say for people who are looking at that, especially with social media?
Yeah, so I would say consistency in three things, and I'll explain in three different ways. So one is consistency with posting on social. The awesome thing about Instagram is you can post on three different things in one shot. So I take absolute advantage of that. Reminder that I still have a full-time job, so any way I could save time, I'm with it.
Right, gonna ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do post. If for those of you who don't know, Instagram also has a draft feature where you can draft in advance. So Sundays are my days where I'm drafting my posts, and it sits in the queue. And when I do post it on the weekdays and weekends, I literally will post it to my Facebook page, which is linked. I'll post it to my Tumblr page, which is linked. And Twitter, I don't post on too much, but that's also another option. So I push it all.
So you put it in your drafts.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go on. Very intrigued.
Yeah. So when you put it in your drafts, it's unlimited on how many you can draft. So oftentimes I like to describe Gym Hooky as on the go, essentially. Like Gym Hooky is always happening on the go. Mm-hmm. While I'm commuting to work, it's Gym Hooky time. I'm doing my post. I'm using it to answer any emails. I'm using it to respond to any Instagram posts. I take a lot of pride in answering every single comment that people post, questions that people have, people DM me. That's another way why I keep my clients, is like I'm very responsive to them, because I want them to continue to trust me with what and knowing that I can be a resource to them. The evenings are Gym Hooky time as well, when I'm commuting home, doing the same thing.
What are you on, a train in San Francisco? How do you commute?
I commute, so I take a shuttle to the train and then walking. So the morning I actually take a 20-minute walk. I try to get extra time in. If I don't have time to work out, I at least get my 20-minute walk in the morning. So that's just a plug-in, a great way to incorporate more exercise. Even if you can't physically, like if you can't run, you can still walk. Maybe a bit longer if you get off a stop earlier than if you're taking the bus, get off a stop early and walk. Or if you drive into work, parking the farthest in the parking lot and walking to the building. Just kind of thinking about those things. That was my Gym Hooky plug-in.
Great. Love it. So on the way to work and on the way home, you do your social media and engagement and email.
Yes, and email. And that's how it's usually that Sundays. is a huge part of Gym Hooky time. So that's where prioritization and planning come in like full force.
Now, with the drafts that you do with Instagram, you do several of them, but then do you post them all at the same time during these commutes, or you post over the course of the week or over the course of that day? How do you usually do that? Because you can't pre-schedule them, but you can draft them, right?
Correct. So that goes into number 2. So I'll come back full circle on consistency. So I post once a day, and that's how it's been for the last more recently the last year and a half. I post one per day. I also am very cognizant on the time of day that I post. So knowing that I started Gym Hooky on the East Coast, so I have a lot of followers. What's really cool about Instagram is you can see where you can get kind of the stats on where your audience is located and so forth. And a lot of mine is a mix between the East Coast and the West Coast now that I'm here. But I usually post in the morning my time, which is closer to lunch on the New York time. And that's usually when people are on their phones. And I can get great engagement. So I usually post to maybe around 7:30, 8 o'clock while I'm on my commute to work, the West Coast time.
Smart. All right. Is there a number 3 with consistency? This is great.
Yeah. So number 3 for consistency is the type of content that you put out. I'd say I've switched that up a little bit more. When I first started Gym Hooky, this is my lesson learned as well. I was super I tried to be super structured. I'm a Capricorn. I'm so type A.
And I'm a Pisces. I'm not. Oh my goodness.
So when I first started, I was like, okay, consistency was a focus. So I'm like, I'm going to have meal prep Mondays and tips Tuesdays and workout Wednesdays, flex Fridays. It was so hard.
It sounds good. I said, it sounds good. But once you get into it.
Once you get into it. So there was the pressure of what am I going to say? What am I going to do for this post? Do I have pictures? Do I have videos? It was so hard. And when I was working for the startup, I would say it was the hardest. And I had to be okay with not being able to post as frequent. And if my commitment was hey, if I could only post every other day, I want my content to be solid. When I look at the last 3 posts, ooh, that was helpful. Ooh, that was helpful. So committing to that. But what I do now, I do post every day. And as far as being consistent is kind of practicing what I preach in a sense of hey, I'm going to share home workouts. I'm going to share lifestyle tips. I'll share recipes. People know what to expect from me. I'm pretty conscious of although I've made Gym Hooky incorporated more of my lifestyle, that's something that I've added more in the last year because although I am Gym Hooky, I'm not perfect. And I want people to know that as well. I have my 80-20 rule. If you haven't heard of it, I'll be happy to share.
Yes, share.
My 80-20 rule is 80% making healthy decisions, especially when it comes to eating. So I would say it applies more to eating, the 80-20 rule. So eating super healthy 80% of the week, and I like to call the 20% reality of, hey, I'm going out to for drinks with my coworkers. Oh, it's Thanksgiving.
Right.
I'm Caribbean. We know how it goes.
Right. It's more like 70-30 now during the holidays.
Exactly. So really planning ahead. So I like to tell people, and I joke about it all the time with my friends, because when I go out to eat, they're like, oh, what are you eating? I want to see what you're eating. I'm like, this big steak.
Exactly. I'm eating what you're eating and more. Leave me alone.
I'm eating what you're eating and more. So I've tried to incorporate that more in my Gym Hooky and sharing, being consistent with sharing that, because I do want people to know that hey, I look this way, but I'm not in the gym 7 days a week. I don't eat healthy 100% of the time. So it's okay. And it's okay to go off track, because you can get right back on it. It's never too late. So
that's great. I love it. And thank you for sharing that. I love the 3 tips around consistency, because I will say too, I think with most brands, but in my own experience, even being consistent is the thing that really stands out, along with great content, and all of those things matter. But consistency is a thing that I have found out, I don't know what you think, that people, audience, other brands, partners, people that want to work with you, if you say you're going to do something, like you said, once a day, and they see that you're consistent with it, it is one of the things that I've had people bring up more than anything else, and they like the content and that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. And the quality, I think some people may undermine the quality of the content. It's not about the quantity. It really is about the quality. And I've been able to secure partnerships with great brands. I've partnered with Under Armour, Carbon 38, so a lot of fitness brands, and they reached out to me. And that's because they'll look at my content. They know that that I'm sharing great quality images. I have an audience that like is engaged. So that's the other thing. Like you can have 50,000 followers and 1,000 likes, but when they look at the comment section, is anyone commenting? Are they engaged? And that's something that I take a lot of time in. Is every post I do want to create content that I can engage them in some way, whether I'm sharing my favorite green smoothies and I'm asking, what are your favorite green smoothies? Or I'm doing this ab workouts, like tag someone who can do it with you or something like that.
So you do a call out for the engagement. You don't just hope that people will make a comment. Correct.
Exactly.
Smart. Go, Ariel. I love it. Now, as you mentioned, you're at Facebook now, and it's been, you said, about 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're at Facebook, which is no small feat, no small job, I'm sure. So like many women entrepreneurs, especially in the starting out phases, you have your full-time job, but then you're also building this magnificent brand, which we've been talking about. So for those women listening who might be trying to figure out, how to navigate having the best of both worlds, what would you say has been your advice for how you manage both? Even though you kind of sort of told us that with doing things on the way to work and home, but how do you make sure you don't let one or the other slip, if you will?
Yeah, the best way that I can describe that, 2 words: plan and prioritize. I'm actually my full-time job, I'm a project manager. So I've been literally able to apply my skill sets of my day-to-day of like organizing, planning, and help operate Gym Hooky and make it work. So when I say planning, it's really looking at your day, your week ahead of time. On Sundays is my day. Looking at what the week is like. Are there any, do I want to post every day? Cool. Maybe I should draft that content. Do I have any meetings coming up? Do I have any podcasts that I'm on? Hey,
yes. I'm on that list.
Yes. So really planning ahead and prioritizing. One thing that I actually would say I'm still getting better at and I'm learning is the priority piece, because sometimes you want to feel like you want to do everything. Mm-hmm. And I've had to catch myself. I am such a I'm Superwoman. I can get all this done.
Right.
But at the same time, when you don't get sleep, it can catch up to you. And I have to practice what I preach for Gym Hooky and getting some sleep in order to be able to function the next day. So prioritizing what I would say aligns with Gym Hooky. I've had to say no to 2 things, right? If I know that hey, I have my full-time job and there is a crazy project that I'm on right now and I know it's going to take a lot of my time, I'd not necessarily say no to opportunities for partnership, but making it work in some way where it's hey, so keeping that lines of communication open and letting them know is it something that I can try to do in the next month or so, and not just saying no entirely. And that has allowed me to balance my full-time job and still be able to take Gym Hooky to new heights.
And that's so important. Now, thank you for mentioning that too. The idea that it might be a no or not right now, but there's usually an opportunity to negotiate. Mm-hmm. Right? Figure out a way, as opposed to just, I'm going to miss out on that. If possible, ask. You have to ask, as you mentioned earlier, ask to find out what's possible.
Right. Because you just never know, your plans, they're reaching out to you at that point in time, but everyone has a roadmap. These companies have roadmaps. They know that if it's something that they can fit in again for the second quarter, if you can't do it in Q1 of 2018, for example. Mm-hmm. So really just believing that you are the ish and people are going to want to work with you.
Right. That confidence goes a long way.
Yes.
And I think it would help you to discern which opportunities are best for you, because I won't project that on you, but you may get people or brands that come to you that aren't a good fit for your brand. And if we're desperate and not confident, we might go for something that just is completely misaligned with who we are.
And you know what? That is so, so, so huge. That is so huge. And I'm literally in the midst of like making sure that I stick to that because I do believe in it. And I do get opportunities, but I also know what I set for 2017 and what I've set for 2018 as to what I want to do with Gym Hooky. And if every decision or any opportunity that comes my way, does it align? And that kind of makes me stick to doing things that works for that point in time. I know, for example, but no mean disrespecting anyone that's in this world, but like the detox teas and waist trainers.
You're not doing that, huh?
No.
That's not you. Okay.
not me. Respect for anyone who is about that life. But I know for Gym Hooky, I like to pitch making sure like it's the most natural way and like preaching that like I want you to understand your body, not saying that you don't when you use those things, but kind of taking more like the natural approach. So that is something I would say like if I was proposed to partner, wouldn't be on the list for Gym Hooky.
What would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Ooh, that support is sexy.
Yes. Have you really learned that, you feel like?
But no, so support is sexy. So as I mentioned, it's mainly women who are following. There are men too, but like a majority is women who's following. And like I was able to build Gym Hooky through the women who's supporting me. So it's not just people who need me as a resource. It's like people who believe in what I'm doing and are like straight up spreading the word. And I've created such a support system and a support network from the women who are supporting me in a space that can be oftentimes dominated by men, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say, yeah, support is sexy.
And what does your support network look like since you mentioned that?
So I would say friends in the fitness space. So I do meet with people, and right now this is happening a lot more now than ever as like 2018 is approaching. Surrounding myself with people who may be in the health space and speaking through what are things that they have planned for it and things that I have planned and like giving feedback to one another, or there may be opportunities for partnership and so forth. So kind of having people in the space that would understand where I can get their feedback and can help take Gym Hooky to new heights. Other female entrepreneurs in general have been super helpful. So I've joined different networks, actually not just female entrepreneurs in general has been a great resource for me, especially someone who's doing that side hustle versus full time, knowing how I can like really maximize my time, finding out different hacks to resources I could use to make things easier. Like how some of the things I shared with like drafting on Instagram, I learned that from someone and I'm just spreading the knowledge at this point.
Mm-hmm. That's how it works. That's the best way.
That is the best way. So yeah, just having people who are in the space for entrepreneurship and fitness, but equally as important is the people who aren't.
Right. So meaning getting people outside of your industry. Getting
people outside of my industry, people who I can just connect with, and it's not necessarily talking about work all the time. Mm-hmm. So having that healthy balance. I have my self-care crew where it's like, hey, let's go out and get massages. Just remembering who I am through this process and knowing that like entrepreneurship and fitness is me, but also like there's the other part of me like wanting to take care of myself, spend time with my family and so forth. So like my support network is pretty deep.
That's awesome. I love it. So what would you say, only a couple more questions. I want to be conscious of your time, but I'm having so much fun talking to you. So what would you say is your vision for Gym Hooky if you're looking down the line?
Yeah, so my vision, so I recently actually just did a market research survey, worked with one of my best friends to do that. Shout out to McAllen. To understand even more about my audience and what their needs are, what their motivations are, what their challenges are. So my hope is to be able to leverage this data, and we got really good insight from it, to create better content for Gym Hooky. I do want to, with that said, I also want to partner more with different companies so I can further reach a larger audience, as well as spreading the word that, home workouts are the movement. You don't have to go to a gym to live your best life and be active. And then other is just exploring, seeing if there's any opportunity for me to create a product of some sort online. All that's in the works, but know what always will be coming your way is content. What always will be coming your way is possible programs. I'll be partnering in the early year with an awesome company. If you subscribe to my email, my website, you'll get the word on when that's out.
I'm going to subscribe. So at gymhooky.com, we can sign up for your email.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And once you sign up, you can you'll be on the listserv and get the scoop on things for early 2018. I just give you a little tidbit. It's about goal setting and how can you start and stick to your goals, because we all know January is that month where you're like, yeah,
the gym membership surge, and then by February it drops off.
Totally normal. So it's totally normal, but really taking anyone who's a part of the challenge, it's a 21-day challenge, to think about what their goals are and really what are things they can do to stick to it.
Excellent.
Yes.
So in closing, Ariel, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Ooh, I'd like to give a shout out to my mama. But really, my mom she's a very hard worker, and I feel now more than ever, I appreciate her for everything that she did do. She worked a lot. She always had food on the table and so forth. And like now that I'm what they call it #adulting, it's crazy because I'm like, man, I sometimes forget to eat myself. Imagine like feeding 4 kids.
Right. Imagine if you were responsible for other human beings.
Yes. So although, and I, this is particularly a big one for me because like my mom and I clashed a lot growing up. And we rebuilt our relationship in the last few years. And now more than ever, I appreciate everything that she's done. And I know that like she was very strict. She's a tough cookie, a very tough cookie. But I understand now that it was in my best interest. It was her just wanting me to grow and like move forward and excel and not have any distractions. So shout out to you, Mom.
Shout out to Mom. We love it. Excellent. Ariel, thank you so much. This was so much fun, so much great information, things I didn't even know we were going to go into, especially with the social media things. If I had more time, I would ask you what the heck is going on at Facebook, because no one understands why no one can see their posts. But I'm not going to take that out on you. I know that's not your fault.
It wasn't me.
I know, like, what? Had a whole thread going on my, like, why do I not know how Facebook works anymore? But that's okay, because I'm focused on Gym Hooky, and that's what it's all about here. So tell us now how we can support you. Tell everyone again your website, social media, anything else you want to let us know about.
Yes. So if you're on social, main social being Instagram, follow me at Gym Hooky, GYMHOOKY. I do share daily content if you want that motivation, healthy tips. I love to dance as well. So getting that hip hop trap music in the middle of it all to make fitness fun. Facebook, you can find me Gym Hooky as well. And my website is www.gymhooky.com. Great ways for you to get in touch with me is through my email and through my website. So, yeah.
Excellent. Ariel, thank you so much. We made it work. This was fantastic.
Yes, we absolutely did.
Excellent. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Yeah. Just do it. I mentioned it earlier. Just do it. If you have an idea, I know analysis paralysis can get the best of us if we're very conscious of what we put out into the world, as we should, right? We should think about that, but don't overthink things. Just do it and know that you can put things out in its MVP stage. For those who don't know what an MVP is minimal viable product. So enough for your product to function, and you can make changes along the way.
Excellent. Thank you, Ariel. Hold on just a second. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ariel. As I said, so much fun talking to her. So thank you, Ariel. To find out more about her and about Gym Hooky, make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com. Go to the search icon at the top and just type in Ariel, Ariel. Her show notes page will pop up with all of the links, the resources, and the ways to get in touch with her. Supportissexypodcast.com and search Ariel. Now, if you are a woman who wants to get your voice out, to amplify your voice, to share your message, to grow your business, I am super excited to share with you girlonpodcast.com. Girl on Podcast is a booking service that I have launched to help women get their stories and their voices out there. It's something I'm passionate about anyway, if you can't tell. But now I've created something around podcasts and really serving women on both sides of the mic. So whether you're a podcaster or you're a woman who wants to be a podcast guest, Girl on Podcast can help you. So to find out more, I want you to go to girlonpodcast.com. Click the button that's for you, whether you're a guest or a podcast host, and see how we can support you. Girlonpodcast.com. All right, so thank you so much for being here. You know I appreciate you. And until we chat tomorrow, or whenever you're listening to this, we might chat in a few minutes if you're binge listening. Either way, I'm happy to have you here, excited to bring you more fabulous women on the Support is Sexy podcast. So until we talk next time, make sure you always remember you deserve support. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.